Let's talk about using the properties of equilateral and isosceles triangle to do some algebra. Just a quick reminder, our equilateral or our isosceles triangles, we know they have two sides that are the same, and the two angles that are across, and by across we mean like that. They don't share two sides. They're across, they're not adjacent. And then this angle over here, and same thing. Those two angles are also the same. So, then in equilateral, all of the sides are the same, and therefore all of the angles are the same. So all of the angles will always be 60, because of course they have to add up to 180, and they're all the same. So there are a lot of ways we can do this, and a lot of algebra we can do. Essentially, we're going to use our properties, but then we also are going to use the idea that we know that the angles always have a sum of 180. So let's do a couple examples. All right, let's work first on this equilateral triangle. So I'm going to start with the two sides that are marked to be the same. We know that 4x plus 2 is going to be equal to 2x plus 12. So I'm going to set those two equal to each other and then use some algebra to solve. Now, I am going to move the x's to the left. That's how I usually do this, so that they are 0 there. I'm going to move the non-x stuff to the other side. So I end up with 2x's is equal to 10. Divide by 2. So x we now have, that's 5. All right, now let's tackle the angles. We've got those two angles that are equal to each other because they're across from those isosceles, those equal sides. So now let's solve those angles. Let's say 4y plus 30 is equal to y plus 60. Well, let's subtract the 1y. I'm going to put a 1y there just to help. Okay, so it's 0 over here, minus 30. So we end up with 3y equals 30. Divide both sides by 3. Okay, so y is 10. Now, if I substitute 10 back in for y, since I solved for that, 4 times 10 is 40 plus 30. This is 70, and then so is this. So I can then solve for z, knowing that all of the angles add up to 180. I can just take off the 2 I know. Of course, that is 40. So that is z. Again, so you may have to use something that's not necessarily just a property of your isosceles triangles, but of all triangles. All right, next up. I've got an equilateral triangle, and I'm going to begin. I'm going to kind of go in order here, alphabetical. I'm going to start with the fact that 2a plus 10 is equal to 5a minus 5. I'm going to subtract the 5a over. Again, you may choose to do this, differently than me, but I'm going to do that. Get the negative 3a equals negative 15. Divide both sides by negative 3. So a is 5. Now, my next one in here is b. Now, that's just the entire side length. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to plug 5 back in here. So 2 times 5 is 10, plus 10. So this side length is 20. Well, then all of the side lengths are 20. That means it's equilateral. So just substituting that back in, the a that I solved for gave me that. Next up, we know that all of these angles are equal, but you notice they have different variables. So the important thing to know is that all of those angles have to add up to, all of those angles are equal individually to 60. So I'm going to solve this right in here. Subtract 8. So 4c equals 52. Divide by 4. C is going to be 13. Up here, 5d plus 60, or plus 10 equals 60. I'll subtract 10. So 5d equals 50. Divide by 5. D is going to be 10. And finally, setting this one equal to 60. I'll subtract 9. I'm kind of running out of room here, so let's just do that one in our head. We've got 51. Divide both sides by 3, and that's going to be 17. So be ready to set things equal to each other and solve, for instance, equal sides or equal angles, but also be ready to use the properties of the equilateral triangle that we know each individual angle is 60, so we can kind of solve them one at a time. The one other thing to be aware of is sometimes, especially on standardized tests, they may ask you to solve a problem like this, but the question might not be what's A, it might be what's the side length. So just be very careful for what your final answer was supposed to be. I did both. I had to solve for A, and then I said, okay, but what's the side length? But read the question carefully so you know what your final answer should be. If this video helped you, please like and subscribe. I have an entire playlist of geometry.